Hey guys, it's Full Cars here, live and direct from Montreal, Quebec. I thought I'd do a quick update with regard to the Kraken draft, expansion draft, and our protection list. So the big shocker today is not Weber. Weber was sort of a logical one given his age, given his contract in perpetuity, given his injuries, which appear to be threatening, career threatening at this point, and we'll see what his mindset is. Of course, it's always difficult coming off such a big run. You need a few months to figure out what's what with your body, with your mind. But the shocker is, of course, Carey Price. Carey Price, who is loved and admired and cherished by the Montreal fan base and beyond, was left unprotected. Now, why would they do that? Why would they protect Armia? I assume they have some tentative agreement with Armia with regard to resigning. They definitely need Armia's size, and they need his length, and he has a very unique skill set, including on PK, which is something that the Habs really value within the playoffs. Now, kind of strange. So Carey Price, well, Carey Price has $10.5 million a year on his contract for the next 5 years. So that's $52.5 million. I think he has signing bonuses again for the next 5 years. This year, I think it would be $11 million. So we're talking about a $10.5 million cap hit for a goaltender who's 33 years old, about to turn 34 in August. And I assume he had a no trade, but he would waive it specifically for the Kraken. Now, why would Carey Price be okay with moving? Would he be? I don't know. I haven't spoken to him. And Carey Price is from BC, right? So his mom is a chief of the First Nations. He played for the Tri-City Americans, which is also in Washington. So all within, a few hundred kilometers drive, family on both sides of his family. So he's probably thinking about his family at this point in time. So he probably would be open to it, even though Montreal obviously is home and he's loved it. Also just completed a cup run, which might make it a bit easier. Now, why would the Habs do it? The Habs would do it because Jake Allen, his salary is under $3 million over 2 years. So they only have him for 2 years. Allen is an absolute bargain, and that's why we would protect him. That makes a lot of sense. They probably would have taken him, and they probably do have some young goaltenders in the can. Of course, they have Caden Primo. I know that they have the Danish goaltender who's like 6'5" in the new model, but he doesn't have that much history behind him in terms of data other than in Europe, so it's hard to know. But they probably also feel that they can get a goaltender on the market. I mean, someone like Gibson, who's paid $6.4 million. John Gibson's one of the best goaltenders in the league. So it really depends on how you manage your team and how you build your team. Do you build your team from the goaltender out in this era with a 1A and 1B? Not necessarily. And someone like a Fleury, I think, only cost $7 million compared to the $10.5 million that Price is paid. I'm just looking at this now, and I think Carey Price is the most expensive goaltender in the NHL. Then it's Bobrovsky at $10 million. Vasilevsky's at 9.5, that we know. Marc-Andre Fleury, as I said, $7 million. And then John Gibson, 6.4. Murray's in there too, who hasn't done too well in the last year. He didn't, or last couple of years he hasn't. But his is, I think, 6.25. Connor Hellebuck's 6.2 about. So to give you an idea, you can actually get a goaltender in the $7 million range of the caliber of Carey Price. Now, you might say he's a unique and all that, but he doesn't have a ring. Murray has a ring, and Flower has a ring, and Vasilevsky has a ring. John Gibson doesn't. I think he's like a 9.12 save percentage in the playoffs, but also he hasn't necessarily had the best teams in front of him. Anyway, so it's interesting. You see why they might do it. It's kind of also interesting the fact that they would protect Armia. There's players in NHL like Eller who show up in the playoffs, and you understand that their value and why they end up on contenders. And Armia might be one of those. Armia's not signed, though, so they probably have something in the works. That's the other thing, too. I think the key thing here is we do not know the nature of the discussions and agreements and verbal agreements and gentlemen's agreements that go on behind the scenes when they make these decisions. Now, the other thing, too, is if you do free up cap space in Price, what on earth do you get for it? Well, there are names floating around, like Gibson, as I mentioned, but like Tarasenko, Landeskog is left unprotected this year. So you can see that some big names are being left. Giordano's unprotected. Some huge names are being unprotected. The other facet of it is, of course, the gamble aspect. It could be that Bergevin's just thinking, look, The Kraken are just entering the league. It's all about cap space in the new NHL. It absolutely is, because there's so many great players on the markets, changing markets. Would a new team tie up $55 million, $11 million signing bonus this year? Would they tie up over $50 million in cap space on day one as they're building their team, as opposed to getting someone of Tarasenko's caliber and quality? Or Landeskog, who is a shoo-in for captaincy in most organizations. So it could be that Bergevin's just thinking, listen, if he takes him, I'm taking a risk. And fine, we'll do a ton with that cap space, and we'll start drafting goalies and bring together the team for our next generation of Suzuki's and Caulfields, who are they went in the first year, but they might suffer some sophomore jinx. And in future years, they'll finally solidify a new goaltender in his 20s. Or he might just be thinking, they're not going to draft Carey Price. He's going to tie up way too much cap space. They'll be hamstrung. You don't want to start the organization a la Garth Snow and be dumping contracts. Like, for example, Ladd was just dumped, who's barely an NHLer now, but I think he was tying up $5.5 million in cap space for the Islanders. They dumped him, along with a second-round pick, a conditional second and conditional third, I believe. I was unclear whether two of them were conditionals. But anyways, and the conditionals basically relate to how far you go in the playoffs. What was the nature of that trade that the Islanders did with Phoenix? Phoenix got all of that, and what did the Islanders get? They got zero. Now, why would the Islanders make a trade where they get nothing in return? They're still cleaning the books from Garth Snow's era. So people are very, very conscious right now in the new NHL with all this talent, all this young youth talent, speed of the game, transition game. And what the Habs were able to do in free agency, get yourself a Sherrod or get yourself an Edmondson or whatever they've done, pick up a Petrie for a second round pick. And we got Danault for Dale Weiss, which is an absolute complete steal. And it's interesting, what are they going to do with Danault? I mean, I think he turned down 6 times $5 million, and then he posted only 5 goals this year. Then he delivered in the playoffs by being the best defensive sort of Selke guy in the playoffs. It's interesting. It all has to do with cap space and probably discussions about who is going where and who wants out, and what the core will look like in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, post-Weber and potentially post-Price. So it's a bit of a calculated risk, along with the fact that it's not punitive towards Price. It's to reward him to go back home, where both sides of his family are, if he's taken, and then he'd be the number one guy and the guy. Do the Kraken take him? I wouldn't. I would not. And the reason I say that is I just think 10.5 is just too much for a goaltender in the new NHL, just given the speed and change of the game right now. That's my belief system. Now, what does he bring in terms of leadership, and what you're losing in terms of leadership? You have to feel that you have enough of a core with regard to that if you allow someone like Price to disappear. Can you imagine how social is going to melt down today? I can hardly watch. I can barely read it anyways, just because people are so bitter, and I don't know, just I see the worst in people, not the best, not constructive. I can tell you that for the most part. Anyways, guys, I'm going to be Full Cars live and direct from a place called Montreal. Please be sure to sub, like, #Dryden. I will be giving away 2 massive boxes in my next 2 breaks. Okay? Full Cars live and direct from, I was going to say Brooklyn, Montreal, Quebec.
Just move on up to a greater day with just a little